having seen this pattern time and time again, really opened my eyes that, hey, there's a different lens that people are looking at, generative AI through now, as opposed to just kind of traditional IT projects. So one, that was kind of the first opener for me that, hey, maybe the enterprise is going to look to run some portion, maybe the majority of their generative AI workloads, especially with sensitive data, in a private cloud environment. So that was kind of the first big eye opener for me.
Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. This is Darren Pulsford, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On today's episode, Embracing Private GenAI, with special guest Jason Langone, AI specialist from Nutanix. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Darren. Nice to see you today.
Hey, it's been a while. We've tried to get this going for, probably the last 6 weeks or so. We finally got our schedules lined up and all the right people talked to. But I'm glad you're on the show today, Jason. We're going to talk about generative AI. We're going to talk about private Gen AI, chat GPT in a box concept. But before we get into there, Jason, every superhero has a backstory. All right.
There's a stretch already.
There's a stretch. No, everyone's got superpowers. So what's your backstory and then your superpower? I'll determine your superpower for you if you don't know.
Yeah, I might have to defer on that. My backstory, I was a very early employee at Nutanix. I was doing, at the time, virtualization consulting, primarily for the U.S. Department of Defense, primarily overseas. Somehow found Nutanix, was there 2011 through 2020. Had just a fantastic run, and then I kind of got it in my head. I was like, ooh, grass is greener on the other side in the startup world, so let's go back to startups. I did 2 startups, the last of which was a generative AI SaaS company. I learned a ton. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those learnings today. And then I rejoined Nutanix in January of this year to run our AI business globally. And it's been 100 mile an hour ever since. Just got back from London yesterday. So it's been...
That is awesome. That's awesome. So you jumped ship right when AI was taking off to jump into the whole AI realm. Probably incredible learnings from doing that, more than what you would have learned at Nutanix for sure. Because when you're in the deep of it, it's different, right? But smart moving back out, right? Because hey, I've done startups too. It wears you down. People don't understand. I mean, startups, it's like hair on fire every day. You don't know if you're going to get paid at the end of the week. Is that money going to hit the account or not? Yeah, are we going to land the big customer? You can only do that for so long.
That's you summed it up perfectly.
I've been there. I've done 3 startups myself, so I know how that goes. So let's dive in. Let's take all that learning that you had around Gen AI. Boy, that's an exciting thing. And let's talk about the whole concept of private generative AI, because not everyone's comfortable with chat GPT. Not everyone's comfortable with Anthropic or with Copilot, or XAI from, Elon. So what's this whole why? Why do we need private Gen AI? What's the whole crux behind that?
Yeah, I mean, Darren, I think a little bit comes back to one of the lessons I learned when I was back in the startup world, and we would brief these enterprise organizations. We would listen about the business challenges they wanted to solve with generative AI, and we'd be, marching down the process with them. And then all of a sudden, chief legal officer has entered the chat. It's like, oh, I've never spoken to one of these before.
The legal guys always ruin our fun, right? They're concerned about privacy and laws and,
But it was really interesting because I was used to talking to CISOs and compliance folks and security folks, but not really legal. And, having seen this pattern time and time again, really opened my eyes that, hey, there's a different lens that people are looking at, generative AI through now, as opposed to just kind of traditional IT projects. So one, that was kind of the first opener for me that, hey, maybe the enterprise is going to look to run some portion, maybe the majority of their generative AI workloads, especially with sensitive data, in a private cloud environment. So that was kind of the first big eye opener for me.
Well, and I think you hit the number one thing was sensitive data in a public Gen AI. People are afraid of it, and some people are oblivious and they just put whatever up there. But the truth of the matter is that's public information now. Once you put it in a public Gen AI, it is public information, right?
Yeah,
Nothing
it's
protecting you
public.
legally
It's not
anymore.
coming back.
Yep.
Agreed. And and I will say we've seen even some enterprise organizations who are very cloud friendly. They everything net new from an application perspective is in an AWS or is in an Azure, GCP, or Oracle Cloud. And even those enterprise organizations are looking at, hey, some subset of what we're going to do from an AI or Gen AI perspective, even though we walk around in our AWS polos, we're not going to put that up there again from a privacy, security,
No,
competitive
that's true.
advantage, IP perspective.
Well, let's touch on that a little bit because I
Okay.
can do a private Gen AI in an AWS cluster. It's still
Sure can.
private,
Hmm.
right? But I've seen people say the same thing. I don't even want anything in Gen AI up in the cloud. I'd rather run it on my own hardware than have a Gen AI running up in the cloud somewhere. Are you seeing the same thing?
We are. It's probably a year ago now. MIT Sloan School of Management had a nice list of recommendations for CIOs on how should you think through the underlying infrastructure for your generative AI workloads. And kind of long story short, they said you should have absolute control over that environment if there's going to be sensitive information. And I think a lot of folks take that advice and they look at, okay, private cloud is ultimately where I have total transparency and truly absolute control. So for those types of use cases or data sets, we are going to keep that here.
All right. So advantages to private Gen AI over public is data privacy number one.
Mm-hmm.
What about speed? I mean, and accessibility to more information. Can anyone keep up with OpenAI's? I mean, they're releasing new models like every 4 months with crazy new. So there's no way I'll be able to keep up with that. So is that a trade-off, or are there ways that I can do a private Gen AI that can keep pace with what's going on in the public Gen AI world?
Yeah, I had some really interesting conversations about this very topic this week. And, the common thread was, when you think through personnel and skill sets that are needed, at some point, most enterprise organizations are going to want a team that understands how to fine tune a model. Maybe not necessarily the deep math involved in training one from scratch, but in fine tuning an off the shelf model from Hugging Face, from NVIDIA, from wherever, and then fine tuning that for that specific enterprise organization, for that particular line of business within the organization, so that you can take the best models that are coming out. It does seem like every other week, every other month, and
Oh
then
yeah,
apply
crazy.
that in a safe way internally, but again, that really understands your business. So we see that already with plenty of our
So
customers.
you see specialization of models as being even more important than generalized models, because that's what public Gen AI is generalized models. They may have some specialization, but we already know that OpenAI um, is really multiple models. It's not one big huge model. It's multiple models that focus on different things. It's pretty cool how they made it seem like one from the interface. But specialized models is the direction that we're seeing. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think so. And again, I think folks, when they're asking something of the artificial intelligence, they don't want just a pretty answer back. They want an answer that's, cohesive, coherent, but also applicable to their domain and their environment. And that's going to take either some type of a RAG solution or some type of fine tuning that really tailors the artificial intelligence for that particular environment or customer, or again, even line of business within the organization.
Okay, you brought up a word. We got to
Uh-oh.
talk about it. RAG,
Uh-oh.
right? So retrieval augmented generation. I've had people talk about it before on the show, but can you explain just real briefly the difference between fine tuning a model to specialize it and using a RAG? Because I mean, fundamentally the technologies are very different, but use wise, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, is where a lot of folks will start when, they're embarking on their generative AI journey. They recognize if they ask a large language model a question about their business, they're going to get a generic answer back. So it's like, how do we start building in this domain understanding and expertise? And that is RAG. That's taking a repository of PDFs or documents or data in a database, essentially ingesting that, using the large language model for the conversational piece, but the actual answers are found within your own, enterprise data set. So that's, I think, where a lot of folks start. We're, seeing a lot of enterprise organizations, not just looking at that within the data center, but even out at the edge, out at the factory floor.
For their customers, yeah,
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. So
So
that's
so
RAG.
that
Good.
so that RAG basically it's a database sitting there that the large language model can reference to get
Mm-hmm.
answers out of. So that's pretty cool because I've just made all my documentation with a natural language front end, which is
Great way to put it. Great way to put
that's
it.
pretty cool. All right, so that's all I need. Why in the world would I ever need to do fine tuning then?
Mostly for quality of answers. When people
Okay,
have started to embark, they may decide, hey, these answers are good, but not quite good enough. Or, hey, they make our customers happy, but not happy enough. There's still too much back and forth. So can we make the experience either for our customers, for our employees, for our workers out at the edge, can we make it, more optimized? Can we decrease the time that it takes someone to find an answer that's of value?
okay. So explain. I love that because now we're teaching the LLM or we're telling the LLM by fine tuning the types of answers we're looking for. How
Exactly.
do I do fine tuning?
There's a lot of different tool sets, out there. There's a lot of companies that focus on a stack meant purely for managing the model, NVIDIA, Data Robot, Data IQ. There's a lot of companies that just play in that space. But essentially, as Darren, as you put it, you're giving an existing model data that you're then prioritizing or weighting. You're saying, I want more answers that look like this
That
than
look
look
like
like
this.
that. Exactly.
Okay. Got it. Now, does it actually change the parameters of the model, or oh, it does? Okay,
Yeah, change the
because
weights within the model.
the weights within the model. Because I was
Mhm.
thinking, once I fine tune a model, it's much harder to now swap it out because I'd have to fine tune the next model that I bring in.
This
But
is
with
it.
the
This is a good
RAG,
point.
right? With the RAG, I can swap the LLM all day long, no big deal, right?
Accurate.
Because
Accurate. Yep.
okay, so I can see the benefits of both now, right? For adaptability, and I would use a RAG for more specificity. Is that the right
Yeah,
word?
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. um, I would probably do more fine tuning. Like if I always want all my responses to be in JSON format instead of normal English, I could do that with fine tuning. Or if I want it in a higher level language or whatever, I can use fine tuning to get my answers more in the type of expected responses that I want. But
For sure.
it locks that model down now. I'm with that. I fine tune a specific model.
For that particular use case, and just candidly, you're probably now in perpetuity updating that fine tuning at some set interval.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I can see the benefits of both. Let's talk about where do I find people that know how to do this stuff? Because I mean, you can't just, throw a rock and hit someone that knows how to fine tune an LLM or how to set up a RAG, right? This can be very difficult, is it not?
It can be. So finding these people is difficult. I think, and I was really fortunate that I was in the virtualization space early. It was pure luck, right place, right time, right
Hey, that
clearance.
works.
That works. I take no credit other than I just happened to stumble into it early. And it, for me, was just a great career trajectory. We're in the same kind of a moment. It's very early days of generative AI. Those that, hey, they crank on something at night, or they're reading or dabbling or tinkering on the weekend, and then thinking, how do I apply this in my workplace? Those that can take it a step further and take this really powerful technology and understand how to start to connect it to a business challenge. I mean, those are the people that are going to be hopping up many rungs of the corporate ladder over the next 12 to 24 months, in my opinion.
No, all right, that makes a lot of sense. So you're looking for tinkerers. That's if I need to set up my own, you need the guy that's got a lab in his house, right? That plays on the weekends with Gen AI, or that can understand business needs and how this could be leveraged in those business. But setting up a RAG, because I've done it myself. The first time I did it was a nightmare. I'll just be brutally honest. All right, the instructions,
Fair enough.
there were you had to understand Python and Go, and
Yeah.
it was like, oh, I'm going to pull my hair out in Docker containers. And luckily, I know a lot of that stuff, but I thought, there's no way that a common person can do this. But I started seeing, just in the last 3 or 4 months, turnkey RAG solutions that I just download. I'm off to the races. They're up and running, and no big deal. But that's for my laptop. How do I do that in the enterprise? Because that's a different beast. Enterprise private Gen AI is different than running it on my laptop. So what do I do for that? Can I
Yeah, I mean,
just run it on my servers I have? Do I need special servers?
yeah. So, I mean, if we start with something you just mentioned, which is spot on accurate. Hey, if you were doing this 6 months ago or 12 months ago, you were copying and pasting,
Oh gosh, yeah.
commands from some subreddit and you just hoped that it worked. You really know what was going on, and you're firing up containers and, fingers crossed that it works. That's come a long way. And I mean, like we see every day in our LinkedIn feed or in podcasts, we're learning that the pace of innovation here is very, very fast. Where 12 months ago, it's command line. Now it's drag and drop UIs for a lot of this stuff. It is important to think through, especially at the enterprise level, how are we going to support these types of workloads? If we're IT, how do we enable the business to say yes to using generative AI to solve these challenges? And some of that is looking at the personnel and understanding the platform you're going to ultimately try and run these workloads on. Is it easy to use? Can we easily troubleshoot? Does it easily roll into our operational efficiencies? You're going to need some, new type of processing
Access
power.
control.
Access control, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to think through. Even, imagine, Darren, let's go back to our friend, the chief legal officer. Let's say that, someone from legal calls you, Darren, and says, hey, we need to understand all the models that are in use within our enterprise organization right now. There's something on the news. One of these models has been exposed. Are we using it? Like,
Are we using it? Yeah.
How do you think through that and solve for those types of challenges?
All right. So those are important aspects. Are there companies, and Nutanix, you guys have an offering in this space?
We do.
That helps me set up a private Gen AI for my enterprise, correct?
You
So
are correct.
it's not just hardware and virtualization, but you have a full stack. I can go in your catalog and say, I would like a Llama 3.5 private Gen AI, and Jason's going to deliver it.
next finish, done.
Next. All right, there you go. All right, in the podcast, we're good. There, it's a little more than that, isn't it?
It's a little more than that, but if we think through, even before this explosion of generative AI in the enterprise, Nutanix as a company already had many of the pieces of the puzzle. Clearly we have a world-class hypervisor. We've got storage for structured, unstructured data. We've got, just a great Kubernetes platform, because something a lot of people don't realize in this space, Darren, is Kubernetes is the new foundation. Whether you're running
Yeah.
Kubernetes on top of a hypervisor or on top of bare metal
Or bare
or in the
metal.
cloud,
Yep.
this is the new foundation. And, I like to think Nutanix makes it easy for organizations who maybe are new to Kubernetes to have some, operational trust and capability there. And then if you kind of go think about it 2 levels up, you've got the generative AI applications, whether you're off the shelf deploying or whether you're building them. But there's this new layer that's required. How do you centrally control the models that are allowed to be used and authorize and revoke, with RBAC? How do you serve it up and monitor the performance?
Yep.
And that's that new layer that we have now solved with Nutanix Enterprise AI. But yeah, I mean, how do you make this easy so you can go solve and deliver value with generative AI?
And I've identified that layer myself, right? In it's bringing the data in governance of data and applications and containers all together in the right context, under the right permissions, with zero trust, security aspects or principles in there. So
Sure.
I'm glad to hear that you guys have a product that I can go out and now deploy and get it in. Now, can I separate and take what you guys have and put it on my current hardware? Or is this a bundled package where I can just buy an appliance? What's the easiest way for me to approach, setting up my own GenAI?
Yeah, so the full answer is you could do either or. Most organizations are recognizing that generative AI is a new type of workload with some new requirements. So much like if we rewind the clock 15 years and think about virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, people were buying specialized hardware for that, standing up new clusters. And they're doing the same here. And they're looking at, okay, I recognize we're going to need more processing power for serving of the model. We may need a comprehensive strategy from data center to the edge. What does that look like? And again, Intel's got a really great story there. But again, it's thinking, holistically across the organization. How are we able to deliver this? Most folks are buying new hardware, new clusters. Oftentimes this is coming out of a new budget as well. You certainly could retrofit, but most folks that I've seen,
most folks are buying. So that brings up another question on the hardware side of things. There is a long lead time for GPUs right now. That's an understatement, right, Jason?
That's an understatement.
But does that mean I just wait in the queue before I can set up my own private Gen AI, or can I run without GPUs my own Gen AI? I know the answer. I hope you have the same answer I do.
My guess is we have the same answer. So you certainly could move forward without waiting on GPUs. If you're using, maybe gear from a year or 2 ago, you just need to set the expectation. Maybe that answer is going to come back slower. But if you're buying, again, new hardware, the latest and greatest from Intel, you're going to be well served when you're now deploying, whether it's in a pilot, a phase 1 implementation. You're going to deliver a positive user experience, because ultimately, once you start getting close to a go live, you want happy users. You want the water cooler effect of accounting's loving that new RAG application you stood up for them, and they're spreading the word, and now HR's calling and saying, hey, we need the same thing for our business.
So, I mean, one of the benefits of private Gen AI is I don't have to train my model, right? It's just inference, basically, right? So what that means is I can use inference engines. I don't need a GPU necessarily to get the performance out there, like you mentioned. And here's the pitch for Intel, right? Intel CPUs work great for inference, lower cost, and I can get them today. And that's a huge benefit. If you want to train your models or fine-tune models and things like that, maybe you need some GPUs, but inference works perfectly fine on the CPUs. Last year's CPUs and the new ones that just came out, the Xeon 6 CPUs that are out today. So
Yeah.
There's my pitch. I mean,
It's a good pitch. And it's, if you think about what folks are, the majority of organizations are doing, they are doing inferencing. They're saying,
yeah,
we
yeah.
want to communicate with the model. We want it to understand our documents. We want answers back. They're not building, models themselves for the most part. They're not even fine tuning. Most people start with inferencing. When I look at the vast majority of the projects we're involved with, even if they're doing training, the majority of the focus for deployment is on the inference side. Again, data center, regional, edge, for some customers, even mobile. Like, how do we, again, deploy this closest to the workers, the customers who are going to benefit the most from this?
So what that tells me is I don't have to wait, because there's another danger in waiting. My competitor might not be waiting, and I'm waiting for the latest and greatest GPUs, which I can get a year and a half from now and pay $50,000 for, or I can stand up. I can stand up a rack today, right? I can order these appliances from Nutanix today. Is that a true statement?
You can order it today. I mean, I love this kind of this talk track as well. EY put out a really nice report. It's probably 6 months ago. It goes really deep into the exponential value of generative AI projects within the enterprise. And kind of long story short is, if you have two companies, company A and company B, company A starts today. They start trying to solve a specific business challenge with generative AI today. In 6 months' time, company B is not 6 months behind. They're 12, 24, 36, 42. They're some exponent greater behind because they've delayed realizing that value. They've delayed the operational learnings, kind of the horizontal water cooler effect of solving more problems within the organization. So, I mean, that's typically our guidance, is find a specific challenge and let's start today.
And let's start today. That's interesting that you said that, because we had just yesterday an MIT professor came out. I don't know if you heard about this. Did you hear about this?
I don't know. I was on a plane almost all day yesterday.
Oh, he played. So he came out. It's all over the news. He came out and said Gen AI will only affect 5% of the jobs in the next 5 years. So, and he goes, not just lost jobs, but even affect. And I was like, is that guy smoking crack or something? I mean, new technology. Yeah. I mean, I have to have him come on the show so he can justify what he said, because I just finished my PhD in technology management, and part of my dissertation was on the effects of first mover advantage in economies in new technology adoption. It's huge. It's massive.
It's massive, even out of the context of Gen AI. You now put that in this world. I mean, it's mind-blowing to think of, if you're not pursuing this right now at a strategic level within the organization, how far are you, you blink and
how far are you falling behind?
How far are you falling behind?
Yeah, no, absolutely 100%. All right. So Jason, if people want to get started, because we've riled them up now, you did a good job. Right? If they want to get started,
high five.
Yeah, high five. There you go. Where do they start? I mean, how do they get in contact with Nutanix? Nutanix has got a great offering. Where do they go? Just Nutanix.com?
Yeah, you can go to Nutanix.com, Nutanix.com/AI. There's a bunch of great information. I mean, feel free to reach out to me. My email is super easy. It's just jason@Nutanix.com.
You're one of the OGs at Nutanix.
Yeah, they gave it back to me, which was nice. But I'll say, for many organizations, they have a specific challenge or a couple in mind, and they want to understand which one should we do, or what's the best way to do this to decrease risk as much as possible. So we have those conversations. And for others, they recognize they need to get started. They're not entirely sure where. So, there's a series of workshops we do, whether on-site or virtual, primarily for C-level or kind of VP level folks, decision makers. And the interesting thing is, we're doing it not just for IT, but to say, bring your leader friends in accounting and finance and logistics and manufacturing
Absolutely.
and HR, because challenges live there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I'm starting to give workshops myself on generative AI at the strategic level and the individual level. And if IT's sitting in the room, I'm talking to the wrong people, because the business owners are the ones that are going to take the most advantage out of Gen AI. It's going to change fundamentally the way that we do business. So
that's the soundbite right there. I mean, we see, I would swag it, 80% of the specific business challenges come from outside of IT. There are still some in IT that can be solved.
Yes, there are,
with generative AI, but the majority will come from other lines of business.
I totally agree. Hey, Jason, our time's up. It's been so much fun. We could talk forever. This is great. We most definitely we'll have to have you come back on the show and get kind of an update on how things are going in the next 6 months or so.
Oh, for it. It's been a pleasure, Darren. I really appreciate the opportunity and the time today.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.